Welcome back. You're listening to the panel discussion, Capitalizing on Cloud, Transforming Government IT, sponsored by Juniper Networks on federalnewsradio.com and 1500 AM. I'm your host, Jason Miller. My guests today are Joe Klimovich, the Chief Information Officer at the Justice Department, Doug Nash, the Deputy CIO at the Agriculture Department, Christine Calvosa, the Federal Communication Commission's Deputy CIO, and Tim Soames, the U.S. Federal and Managing Director of Worldwide Government at Juniper Networks. We brought up the security piece a couple times, and related to the security piece is the idea of services. And I think when we talk about disruption, we talk about cloud, I think security gets disrupted quite a bit, because it's not just, oh, I'll go to my data center and put in the latest patch, or automatically do it, hopefully, or unplug the network from the wall completely when we have a problem. So Christine, you brought up something earlier that you guys are starting to go down a path around security and services. Talk a little bit more about what the FCC is doing.
Sure. So first thing, security concerns or threats are more dangerous every day. And so we have to be more proactive and take a more holistic enterprise look at what we need to do in order to secure our data, our enterprise, our systems. And so what we have done is really taken, and this is what we've been talking about, is really taking a look at the services that we need, from insider threat to external threats to incident response, to even doing forensics analysis. So we are really looking at the services that are being offered by our cloud partners. And we're looking at the best and brightest in the industry to come and support those type of services that we're looking at. We're also very much not looking, whereas before it was very tailored, like one person did something very well, another person did something very well. Now we're really looking at our cloud providers and our security service providers to say, we can give you a whole plethora of different security services just in the solution that we have here. And so we have been really looking at, given the constraints that we have from a budget perspective, like everybody else, at really taking a holistic enterprise service level look at enhancing our security services.
And part of the reason for that is because where one time you could do one-offs on single applications or on a grouping of applications, it's hard to do that with a cloud provider, because we picked on Microsoft a little bit today. Right. If you're using the Azure cloud, you can't just say to company X, go secure that application, company Y, go secure that application. Is that?
Yes. Yeah, so we want, and we're actually putting a lot of the onus on the cloud providers to take to do a lot of the security and support for us. I mean, we have, and we're working, and we hope that they're working very closely with our partners of FedRAMP office to make sure that they are getting all their systems. They are following, they're getting them certified, but I mean also not just certification, right? But they have to look at the threats that are coming more often, right? And we're looking really to them to be the leaders in that, so that they can give us a good feeling that they are making sure that our systems and our data are secure, right? So we have a set of policies and procedures and standards, but they need to continuously evolve.
Joe, jump in.
The Microsoft case, though, is something that's, I think, easier compared to some of the other cloud application hosting. The one that I spent a lot of time thinking about is we contract with another company for infrastructure as a service or platform as a service, and then we host a third party's application in that environment, and then the government is responsible for some of the security, the infrastructure or platform cloud service providers responsible. The third-party application that's running in that environment needs to be secure as well. So you have all these different responsibilities spread out across at least three parties in most cases, and any one of those three could change configurations, settings, that kind of thing, that could disrupt your overall security profile. So one of the things that we're trying to look at is really how do we do continuous monitoring and continuous security, but really securing the information that might be out there. It is very hard to ensure that all of the technology is secure end-to-end.
Tim, when you guys are working with clients, and as Joe discussed his example of a third-party app running on a platform, who's responsible, how does it work? A lot of times, I think Joe and I were talking earlier, talks about service level agreements, but that's if you will, Joe, a little easy to say, harder to do. Talk a little bit about what you're seeing.
Well, the federal government made some really good decisions about 5 years ago when we started exploring cloud computing, and they turned to those major cloud providers and said, we need you to build a separate cloud. And whether it's Microsoft or whether it's Amazon Web Services, they've done that. They have built those secure government clouds and have spent countless millions of dollars and years making sure that they reach that certification. We talk about certification in a minute, but what that does is it says, hey, we are going at this differently. An SLA is really great to talk about until you don't meet it, and then we've got a real problem. What we're doing from a Juniper perspective, we're saying how are we connecting that cloud responsibly, and that goes back to a software and services-led approach. We've started to talk about software-defined networking, but that basically says, hey, look, we're going to create an adaptive network. And when we say adaptive is, we are using big data, we are using machine learning, and we are anticipating threats, and we are making the network a living thing where we are against known threats, against the perception of threats. We're able to modify the network so that we're constantly shifting the defensive posture against what is a very dynamic threat.
And I think that idea of continuous monitoring is something that FedRAMP, the cloud security standard certification service, if you will, has really started to look at much more. Doug, is that something you guys are bringing in, whether from a security standpoint, whether it's continuous monitoring or some way, as Joe described, to deal with that third-party application challenge?
We are, yeah, and we're really, one of our key strategies is about building security in up front, and then also how to leverage FedRAMP certification, and by doing it, taking an enterprise approach, agencies can then inherit those controls so that it makes it easier to get systems, the security certification completed. One of the things kind of related to this discussion we found is our security certification, the risk management framework process. We really have to figure out how to adapt that so that it reflects the unique aspects of cloud. And some organizations tend to be extremely conservative how they follow that risk management framework process, and then it just creates a huge bottleneck trying to get anything deployed. So we're looking at actually how to do some kind of a Lean Six Sigma process or something internal to USDA to speed up the process, because it just, given the priority security, it still takes too long to get it done.
Christine, you're shaking your head there. You must have had that similar experience.
Yes. So, I think for us, just like Doug was talking, it's, we are leveraging these solutions, these cloud platforms. They are getting FedRAMP certified, but there's still a lot of onus on us to make sure that they're following the correct process and procedures, right? And so that would then, so the burden hasn't been lifted from us, right? Because we would be doing the same amount of work if we didn't go to cloud. So for us, the challenge is obviously where's that happy medium, and when is policy or procedure going to change where we're really now putting more onus on the cloud platform and the FedRAMP office to make sure that they are doing what they're supposed to, so that we just report what they're already reporting, and that's more streamlined for us.
Tim?
I think what we're hearing both from industry, what we're hearing from the government and academia as well, is that security is not a separate conversation. It is a strategy across every single conversation. And when you think about what Christine just said, is we collectively have to get to a place where that is managed and the strategy is built into that, so that individual organizations who are doing the right thing in supporting their users are not spending all of their time focused on that as a part of their mission. The criticality is up there, but it has to be managed across the entire continuum.
Joe, let me turn back to you. We've talked a lot about different topics around cloud. We've talked security a lot, obviously. We've talked the network disruption. We've talked about kind of this idea of bringing the different workforce needs. What's, from your experience over the last 2.5 years, and then your experience obviously with the other agencies in government, what's the advice, what's the best practices, what's the takeaway for our audience today?
Well, I think we talked a lot about communications, and you really can't do that enough. I mean, I would go further and say stakeholder engagement. When we talk about acquisition, you got to have your chief acquisition executive on board. These things are not free. There's migrations to the cloud, so you need to have a good relationship with your CFO. And then we've offered a number of VISIP to our IT workforce in the last 2 years, and you need to look at making sure your workforce has the right skills, and if they want to move on, try to do that the best you can. I think in terms of building a cloud management team, have focus, multi-discipline, and get the right skills in place. Picking the best available service at the best price, really focusing on that unit price and making sure it's the right service for your organization is critical. I would not limit it to one cloud provider. I mean, I think that even when you get to infrastructure and platform as a service, you need at least two and maybe a few others. Establishing repeatable processes. I'm big on IT organizations establishing processes, making sure they're repeatable. I like to think your move to either cloud or a consolidated data center to a technology refresh. So one of the things I'm always in a big organization looking for is when does that need to be refreshed, and what's the best way to make sure that system or service can be supported and support the mission, and that may be in a consolidated on-prem data center, or maybe in a commercial cloud, or some kind of combination of both. But look for when does technology need to be refreshed. And I guess maybe we talked a lot about building security into the network. You need to look at make sure your pipes are big enough too, going out to the cloud. I'm always looking for bottlenecks, but build security into your network. And I guess last thing I just leave you with is I think we've done a lot with the cloud in the last couple of years, but I think the greater potential for transformation in the federal space remains untapped, and it's an exciting time to be working in this space.
All right, Doug, some lessons learned from your end.
Well, Joe covered a pretty good set of it. Yeah, really. But
Ditto.
Ditto, right. But a few other things. I think one of the things that's leading to success at USDA is we're taking an enterprise approach. It's very collaborative, and it's strategy driven. We think of best practices by taking that, whether it's at the agency or departmental level, aggregating all those requirements, needs, level of effort into developing common solutions, whether it's security, the network cloud exchange, and coming up with standard contract vehicles to get a variety, but a small set of cloud services we think is really best practice. You want to make sure that the business is driving your adoption of the cloud. Ultimately, it's enabling the mission, and then you have the appropriate other stakeholders involved, such as operations, network security, et cetera. Joe mentioned about the skill set, but definitely looking at what is the cultural change that's required, how to start preparing the workforce to be able to manage in this environment, because otherwise the business, if we're not, from an IT perspective, able to quickly help them evaluate cloud options and get those services in place, then they'll go around us. And so we want to have the right skills to be able to advise them.
It's interesting we keep coming back to the skill set. Christine, your takeaways from your anniversary of Operation Server Lift.
I think everything that both Joe and Doug said is important. Everything that they discussed is exactly what happened during Operation Server Lift. And so it's really, couple key, I think 3 things that I would say is obviously stakeholder engagement and transparency and communication with your business, letting them know that this is happening, letting them know how this applies to them, what the benefits are for them, and what it's going to do for them. I think number 2, the concept of teamwork. So you're bringing together various different people, not only the people who have been supporting you in-house, the current contracting staff, but really now a new partner, a new contracting staff, and really discussing and talking through coordinating and communicating as one team. And then number 3, of course, I would say it's you have to start, right? I think a lot of people are very okay, we're talking about it, we have plans and we have strategies and we have timelines and we are doing a lot, but just start. I think do something about it. The one thing that I have here is start with something simple, execute a small plan, move it, and then start to get the momentum going.
Tim, you get the last word.
Well, thanks so much. hard to top anything that's been said by these experts in the industry, but the things that I would add to complement those were stay open to the architecture, stay heterogeneous in your environment, be open to the experiences of those who have already been down this path. Your organization is unique, but the enterprise strategies that we're all reviewing are not unique, and people have been there before, in some industries that are well outside what the government is doing. And then the last thing to reinforce is you got to own your mission. Don't outsource this to contracting. Don't outsource the requirements of contracting. Stay mission focused, and then demand that industry who's in there to support you support that mission specifically.
I love hearing that, own the mission. I think sometimes we forget about that it all comes back to that one piece. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. I know this has been just a fascinating discussion, very interesting. You've been listening to the panel discussion, Capitalizing on Cloud, Transforming Government IT, sponsored by Juniper Networks on federalnewsradio.com and 1500 AM. I'm your host today, Jason Miller, and I'd like to thank our guests, Joe Klimovich, the Justice Department Chief Information Officer, Doug Nash, the Agriculture Department's Deputy Chief Information Officer, Christine Calvosa, the Federal Communication Commission's Deputy Chief Information Officer, and Tim Solms, the U.S. Federal Managing Director of Worldwide Government at Juniper Networks. For more on this discussion, visit federalnewsradio.com and search Juniper Networks.
On behalf of Juniper Networks, thank you for joining us. A link to the archive session will be sent to you shortly. If you're requesting a training certificate, you'll also receive an email with download instructions after the webinar. This concludes our discussion. Thank you.